We know in this exact, delicious, subtle body the play of these pure essences. It is the soul clothed in sound, or rather, the migration of the soul through sounds. It is music. Hey everybody, thank you for watching Leaf by Leaf. Today I have the extreme satisfaction to introduce to you and talk about The Mysterious Correspondent. 9 never before published in English stories from none other than Marcel Proust. These stories were apparently written around the time of Pleasures and Days. In fact, some of them were actually meant to go into that collection, but then were pulled out of it. Unlike my suspicion or skepticism that these were just simply works that scholars were able to cull and pull together and arrange so that they resembled something like a complete story and then market them as new Proust. In fact, what we have are clearly pieces by Proust and showcase his writerly talents. The reason that the editor makes most salient that they didn't see light of publication is because of their direct evocation of homosexuality. However, to me, it's still not even as overt as many of the places in À la recherche du temps perdu. However, we do see that in Proust's fashion from The Search, he transmutes or transposes it from men to women. Nonetheless, I don't particularly completely buy that that's why they never saw the light of day. In fact, they talk about how nobody ever saw these particular pieces. Nonetheless, we get all kinds of Proustian thought on music and art and suffering and illness and sensitivity, men and women, unrequited love, jealousy, forbidden love, happiness, vocation, the muse, big A, art, typical Proustian topics. The stories in here are extremely brief, and in fact, when I first got my hands on the text and saw that really of the 9 stories, the longest is 15 pages and the shortest is 2 pages. Now, that shortest one is actually just like a 1-page parable. I was a little discouraged and thought, oh, okay, these are the dregs or the bilge of what was at the bottom in the sediment of Proust's archives. But I can say honestly that with each piece I read, I was enlivened. I was charged with that energy that I only really get from Proust. The heft of the book comes from the generous introduction and helping of footnotes. In fact, there's scarcely a page that isn't about half taken up by footnotes because they're careful to give us all the variations. So these handwritten manuscripts, some places lines were crossed out, or as Proust was wont to do, he would have a word in one of the sentences and then other possible variations that he may use written in the margins. So this is a real treat, not only for the lay reader and the Proust lover, but also for scholarship, for students who may be doing a thesis on Proust. It has all of the annotations and supplementary material that you would want in addition to the stories themselves. I love that in the introduction, a summary of all the stories is locked into the phrase, a psychology of suffering. That is indeed Proust's occupation with just about everything he wrote. But not only, the psychology of suffering, but a lot of the different manifestations thereafter and society and how to still see and appreciate and grasp and savor beauty while it's seemingly being constantly denied oneself. Even though in the introduction they point out that perhaps some of these texts were of greater personal significance than of public value, and that's something that, again, I was kind of afraid of when I first got this book. I think that even the lay reader would get a lot out of these stories. In the first story, Pauline de S., his friend is cheerful and lighthearted in the face of imminent death. In the title story, The Mysterious Correspondent, which also has a variation after it, a married woman begins receiving letters from someone professing their desire for her. In A Captain's Reminiscence, a military captain visits a locale that arises via voluntary memory, albeit not with lime blossom tea. But you can see already in almost all of these stories the seeds of what would become À la recherche du temps perdu. And in fact, there's introductory material before each piece that makes those explicit connections all throughout the volumes of Proust's masterwork. In Jacques Lefeld, The Stranger, the narrator notices the strange, evasive behavior of the writer Jacques Lefeld. This is a beautiful piece. In the Underworld is a pagan set play that foregrounds a discussion of homosexuality between Samson of the Bible, Jacques de Lévis de Caylus, and Ernest Renan. And I have to say that this piece, I had to read it several times. It's very rich and almost overwrought with ideas and thought. After Beethoven's Eighth Symphony, which was by far my favorite piece of the whole collection, this is a philosophical rumination on what Proust calls the kingdom of music, and you really see the influence of Schopenhauer's philosophies on music and art here. The Awareness of Loving Her is an allusion to Poe's The Raven. The raven here is transposed and becomes a white squirrel cat. This is a powerful statement on the loneliness of unrequited love. The Gift of the Fairies is very interesting. In just a few pages, Proust constructs a whole mythology of fairies as these entities that bestow our temperament and characteristics, our dispositions on us from the very beginning of life. But then these genies, who are like John Ruskin for Proust, the geniuses that lead us to an understanding of art and what it can do for us. Right in the opening paragraph of it, we get a line that comes right out of À la recherche du temps perdu. He says, "It seems that no one needs to teach us how to suffer." And moreover, he says, how somber, how gloomy life would be if there were never any painters, musicians, or poets who lead us to discover the outer and inner world. I know a lady who walked with her eyes closed after leaving the Louvre, so as not to see the ugliness of the passers-by in the streets of Paris after the perfect faces of Raphael and the woods of Corot. And then again, it ends with that one-page parable called That Is How He Loved. The pieces are very brief, but again, they're packed the way that only Proust can do it, with meat, with thought provocation. I read several of them numerous times to try and savor and unpack everything that they had within them. Meditations on life and on the soul, the depths of emotion in the arts, where we feel ourselves descending into the very heart of our being. There's sensuality in The Mysterious Correspondent that again showcases why Proust and Colette are always used as the great 20th century French sensualists. At the end of it, with the final sentence, it says, Francois received no more letters from the stranger. It's a beautiful, poignant, and hammering ending to this very short text. The air was so sweet that it floated over the water. And isn't the mind a little like the air? However immense the space is that you open in front of it, it fills it. And the mind that suffers from being stifled by an interlocutor, an interest, or a wall that is too close, stretches joyfully, royally, freely, in infinite perspectives. So you see in these beautiful, lengthy sentences that stretch and grope so passionately to touch the infinite, to touch the sublime, that this is unmistakably Proust. Let her love me or let me stop loving her, but one is impossible and I don't want the other. Make some light shine as in the first days on my tears. I was prepared to offer this book as something that would probably only be of interest to Proust enthusiasts and scholars. But honestly, I think that anyone who appreciates fine literature will appreciate these short stories. This is available now from Oneworld. Pick it up and enjoy indulging in the luscious, decadent, and enlarging prose of none other than Marcel Proust.